Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Christina. Thank you so much for joining me here. So this is a reading for the twin flame connection. I'm reading the energy of both twins, but there is, in today's reading, sort of a distinction between masculine and feminine that wants to be made clear. But I do want the people watching this to keep an open mind that it may not play out in exactly the way that you expect. So I am going to sort of distinguish between masculine and feminine in this reading, but again, it may not be exactly the way that you expect. So I'm just going to go through the bottom of the deck energy that's the context of the reading. So we're going to actually start with these two cards today. So we have the Swan and the Lover, and these two decks are made by the same creator, which I really love because the imagery goes so well together. And so just for this reading today, I keep getting a lot of really old pop songs. That's been something that I've been just noticing in my own experience. But when I sat down to do the reading today, I was very clearly hearing the song Love Story by Taylor Swift, which I have been, it's been stuck in my head for the last 2 days. So finally I just actually sat down and listened to it, which is sometimes helpful for getting a song stuck out of your head. And then when these two cards came up, because it's the Swan and the Mirroring, I was hearing To Become One by Spice Girls. So the really just old, really cheesy kind of pop songs is the theme of your reading today. And yesterday as well, there was also, my sister was showing me really old classic K-pop songs as well. I will link them in the description box below in case you're interested. But anyway, so this reading, it's with the Swan, this one here, it's coming in with the energy of mirroring, which, of course, is a really central characteristic of the twin flame connection, where it's when one person goes through some sort of experience, that experience is mirrored somehow in the other person's experience. And because of that, I feel like you watching this, maybe going through a certain experience, it may be resonating for you, but it's also because of the connection, your twin may also be going through a very similar experience where you're almost going through parallel circumstances that are playing out in the very specific details of your life. And so we're going to go through what that is. So even though I'm saying that there may be sort of a distinction here between the divine feminine and the divine masculine counterpart, what I'm saying about this whole mirroring is that it may not be exactly as you expect, that you may be going through a certain situation that your twin is also going through. Anyway, so these cards are really lovely is basically how I'm just gonna end that part. And then what you have here is, so the Empress and the World. So it could be that the divine feminine is going through a very significant completion of a cycle. But because we're talking about the two becoming one, I feel like both twins in their feminine energy, or a feminine aspect of their life, is going through a completion, right? This Empress card has been coming up in the last couple of readings. I feel like it came out in the last 2 readings. So if you're interested, you can take a look back at that. And here you have the Nine of Cups, Knight of Cups, Knight of Pentacles, and the Page of Cups. And so I feel like this Nine of Cups is talking about the emotional fulfillment, but also being in the energy of receiving, because all of these are sort of looking like offers or gifts or support that's coming in for divine feminine. But because it's a mirrored twin interaction, it's both twins are receiving because of their sort of in a realm of nurturing or feminine energy, are receiving sort of emotional satisfaction or gifts or whatever it is. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And then we also have here another interesting situation where we have the Ace of Pentacles, the Three of Pentacles, and the Eight of Swords, and I'm going to put that with the Eight of Cups as well. So what this is talking to me about is that I feel like there's a situation, and it feels like it's outside of the connection. It feels like something that's like related to work or something like that, where there was perhaps like you expected there to be some sort of collaboration or partnership or somebody sort of like working with you, right? Is kind of how this is feeling. So if you, in your work, it kind of feels like there was a potential for like a partnership, or like could be like a friendship or something like that. It doesn't have to be your work. It could just be like your friend group or something, or your family, something like that, where with this Three of Pentacles, I always see this as like the other person, or there's other people who are not contributing. It's like a Three of Pentacles in reverse, a situation where you expected there to be collaboration or support or working together, and it didn't follow through. Like there was something that didn't happen, is kind of how I'm seeing this. And with the Eight of Swords, because that always talks about like staying in a situation that is not beneficial to you. And so with this, I feel like it's like there was a potential for partnership or collaboration in something physical, right? In like your physical realm, like your work, your friend group, whatever. And perhaps waiting for the other one to show up is sometimes how I see with the Three of Pentacles. I don't think this is about your twin, like the counterpart. I feel like this is something outside of the connection, where it's like you're waiting for somebody else, like an associate, a friend, or something to show up, and they didn't, basically. And so walking away from that situation with the Eight of Cups, right? Leaving a situation that's not satisfying in order to be the Nine of Pentacles, which is very independent. So there's been also a lot, this theme in the last three readings of like doing things your own way, doing things independently, through like in the realm of abundance, right? Like what it is that you are creating, what it is that you care about, how you spend your time, that kind of thing. And so I feel like that's a general theme where both twins are going through some sort of like disappointing like work relationship. It could be like something like that, where it's like there's not a lot of collaboration, or there's not a lot of like support. It's a very sort of like energy that keeps you small, is kind of how I'm feeling it. That's the general context of the reading. So we're going to get into more specific details about what this is talking about. So you have here the Maiden. So all of these cards came out together, which is important to mention for some reason. You have the Maiden, the Tear, the Offering, and the Underworld, and then the Eros card. So what I'm seeing with these three cards, because they all have like a very similar energy, and it's that Three of Pentacles in reverse kind of energy, where it's like the Tear and the Offering. And what's interesting about this Offering card is that it looks like there's nothing in the hand, right? It looks like they're offering nothing, is kind of how I'm seeing this. And that's caused some sort of like disappointment, is how I'm seeing it, right? Like it's not like it's not like something that's like devastating, but it's kind of just like it's just disappointing. Like it's like what I was getting with this story as an example is kind of like you've been working towards some sort of like promotion or something like that, or like just a step up in terms of your physical reality, and it's like you were up for promotion, and then when it actually comes time for the offering or the announcement, it's like the promotion goes to someone else, for example, right? Like it doesn't have to be like that kind of work related, but that's sort of what I was getting. And it's kind of like, because of that, with this Underworld, it's like realizing that because the offer didn't come in, something that you perhaps expected or like were working towards, because that didn't happen, it's like realizing that the situation you're in is not beneficial to you. Like, there's no growth in the underworld. It's something that's already just like dead and gone, right? Like it's not an energy of growth or nourishment. With the Nine of Pentacles and the Eight of Swords, it's a place that keeps you like small or contained. And so with this Maiden card, because this one talks about sort of like having to go, like it's like a fresh start, right? It's kind of like, because you can't advance in this company, for example, actually going and starting off something new. And with the Eros card, I've been describing this one as sort of being like, you being the diamond are being like released from this environment. So whatever this environment was with the underworld, it's talking about like going through a significant transformation, right? There's a death and rebirth energy that comes in with the underworld. So it's like you've become a diamond, right? Very refined in terms of like whatever it, like you've learned something here for sure. There's been some sort of like learning or refinement in terms of like becoming a more purified, let's say, version of what it is. Like you've gained the skills and now you're sort of being released out of this energy. And what's interesting here is that we have, because it does feel like it's being described here with the beaver and the stingray. So the beaver talks to me about like an energy that's very comforting, right? There may have been a lot of emotional sort of nurturing that happened within this environment, right? It's something that like where an energy where you grew, where you felt comfortable, that kind of thing. And then with the stingray, because this talks about like energetic alignment to me, like when all of your energy is in alignment, but there is sort of like discomfort in this because it's kind of like being exposed in some way, or like being not exposed, that's not quite the right word, especially the Maiden too, right? It's like I had this dream which is so interesting where I was like you know when you have those dreams when you show up to work and you're not wearing clothes, like it's that kind of energy. That and then this Maiden card came out like the morning after I had that dream. So it's kind of like something about like having to start again, or having to like be in an uncomfortable vulnerability perhaps because you are having to leave this situation, right? It's kind of like everybody knew you were up for promotion, and then the boss gave the promotion to somebody else, and so now it's kind of like there's a vulnerability there because of that. I hope that makes sense. And with the stingray, I was also thinking about Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, who was killed by a stingray, right? Which is like incredibly sad, where there was like something that he loved, right? Like he loved animals and like dangerous animals especially. And the fact that it was a stingray that ended his life, right? There's something there about like, perhaps you were really loyal to somebody or something like that, like loyal to somebody at work, but it's like they didn't show up for you when they could have. And there's that sort of like disappointing kind of energy of like, okay, well now that they've like, because I don't know if it's any, like, it's not like with the promotion example, it's not like they purposely passed you over. It's kind of just like they didn't see some aspect of your value perhaps, or something like that. It was like they were incredibly nurturing, but when it actually mattered, they didn't show up for you, is kind of how this is feeling. Which is a really interesting energy. Anyway, so you have here the Page of Wands and the Five of Swords. So this Five of Swords, right? It's exactly that dynamic where it's like there was an opportunity for them to share something with you, but they chose not to for whatever reason. It's not really going into what that is, like why they didn't share. But it's kind of like, because of that, with the Page of Wands, you are going off, doing something new, choosing some sort of like new adventure or whatever it is, exploring your options, right? It's kind of like, okay, well, this one didn't give me the promotion that I expected to receive, so I'm going to go off and look for other opportunities that would be similar to that, but is not with this partnership, right? Okay. And to clarify that, you have here the King of Pentacles and the Hierophant, which has been coming up a lot in the last couple of readings. Well, not the Hierophant, but the King of Pentacles, where it was describing sort of a relationship that had disappointed in some way. That was it for like the last, I can't remember which reading it was specifically, but there's this dynamic here of like, with this Hierophant, it talks about like tradition, right? Tradition, or like established order. So there was like some sort of order or hierarchy. There was also something here about like nepotism. I don't know, perhaps maybe that's for like one of you, where like you were passed over for a job because they like chose someone who's related to them, something like that, right? Even though you're more qualified or you were working towards it, something, I don't know. Anyways, I'm just gonna leave that there. You figure out for yourself how that applies to you. But what I want to say is that I feel like that situation's coming to an end. This is a very stubborn energy. But it's interesting that there's like the Hierophant came out again. So you have the Hierophant twice. And even though there is sort of like that similar energy of tradition and established order, I see these two cards as being very different. Where this Hierophant, which I feel like is talking about your counterpart, right? So there's a more of like a peaceful, it's almost like a hermit energy where it's like meditating in the forest, right? It's much more natural. This one is kind of like an established order that is represented by like institutions. And for the institutions that we currently have, there are of course benefits to that, but a lot of the institutions, in my experience, have a foundation of like fear or control, right? Fear and control, using fear to control people. That's how I see this Hierophant. This Hierophant is more of like there's a natural, more in tune with nature kind of way to be. And I feel like this is like the shift where perhaps you are leaving a situation because there was sort of like a disappointment in how a situation was handled, and then moving in towards this Hierophant, which is a much more sort of natural, in alignment, peaceful, steady, hermit-like order, right? Because they're both sort of representing tradition or an established way of doing things. So take that however it resonates for you. We're going to move on though. We have here next the Frog and the Whale, which I love so much because almost all, you have 4 animal cards so far that we've talked about that are all water signs. So it feels like either like it could be like an emotional experience for you, or it could just be like realizing that this is happening for a lot of people, not just for you in your dynamic with the twin flame. It could be like connecting you to like a broader collective is kind of how this is feeling. But with the Frog, I'm seeing this as like you starting over, right? Or like gaining some sort of new information, and then moving towards the Whale, which is this sort of Hierophant kind of like, I want to say slow moving, but in a very gentle and positive way, where it's kind of like going with the current, right? Going with the flow of this like very slow moving, very long standing, very steady energy dynamic. Because with the whale, it's like whales are such incredible creatures to me. I find them so fascinating because it's kind of like coming up out of the water. It's like they're mammals. They are warm-blooded. They breathe air, but they live in the water, which I find so fascinating, where it's kind of like something about hold on, there's something there where it's like, what if you were to take some sort of institution, right? Like schooling, like the problem that I have so much with schools as a former teacher was the whole, like, I mean, there's so many problems, but it's something like taking something that's traditional and putting it in an entirely different environment. There's something like that. Taking something traditional that's very long-standing and putting it in an entirely different environment that is much more natural, much more in alignment, much more peaceful, and taking it out of sort of like the structure, the hard lines, like taking something and putting it to like thinking outside the box kind of energy. Okay, so sorry, we're just gonna keep going, because I feel like there's an energy here where like you are leaving a situation with this frog, right? I always see this as like leaving the pond, right? As a tadpole, you're sort of swimming around in a small pond, but you now have legs to be able to like travel or like jump bigger distances. And then here you have the Chariot, which is talking about fast movement, and the King of Wands. And what I was noticing today about the King of Wands is that you have this like, I know that's a lizard, but it looks very similar to the frog today, right? So there's something about, because of the direction of these cards, that where you are headed, where you're going, is actually bringing you closer to the King of Wands. And what that thing is I feel like this is your counterpart. It's like wherever you're going next, because it's being clarified by the Emperor. So you have the Empress as the underlying energy, regardless of whether or not you are the Divine Feminine. It's just saying that you're going towards your counterpart. So with the Eight of Pentacles, I feel like what this realization is having for you is like some sort of new way to do the work, right? It's like because you now see some sort of truth or something like that about the situation that you were in or the energies that you were engaging with, it's giving you some sort of like new way to engage with your work. And it could be something like taking something very traditional, or like if it's not something traditional, it's like doing the work but changing the environment in which you're doing it. It's kind of how this is feeling. And I feel like with the counterpart energy here, because it's like you are the Page of Wands, they're being represented as the King of Wands, where I actually feel like you are the ones who sort of moving towards the other, because both are action cards, right? There's action taking place on both sides, but for them, they're coming through as being much more sort of like stable in their energy, because your energy was like has a lot of the energy of 5 around it, right? With the Hierophant coming out twice. Also, like the number of cards I pulled, there's a lot of like 5 energy, which talks about change. But when going through your counterpart's energy, they were coming in with a lot of 4s with the Emperor, which talks about stability. So they're representing an energy of stability. You're going through a change, and so because of that, you are going towards them. I feel like that's how it's wanting to be played out. So it's like you are, and again, because it's mirroring, both counterparts are going through this energy, but perhaps in different areas of your life. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So how they're coming through, you have here the Four of Pentacles and the Four of Cups, right? So more fours for their energy, where it's like, I feel like they have been very stable in some aspect where you are changing. So they've been holding steady. The Four of Pentacles talks about like holding on to your resources. The Four of Cups talks about, this one specifically talks about like focusing on the things that you have, right? Like the things that are in your environment, even though they're kind of dissatisfying or not exactly what you want. So it's like they were sort of patiently waiting for you to sort of make this change or this action. And with the whale here, because I was seeing this as kind of like their energy of like waiting under the surface, right? Like being able to withstand some sort of patience or something like that, being really patient, waiting for you. But as you sort of emerge as like come out of the pond, right, to join them, it's like then they come to the surface. So there's that kind of energy where it's like, because you're making this action that is bringing you closer to your counterpart, they are also taking a similar action to meet you there, is kind of how this is feeling. And then you have here the Hermit and the Ace of Cups, which I really love. And then the High Priestess and the Four of Swords. So another four for this energy. But because it's like with the Hermit, I feel like this is their energy. They were sort of in an introspection with the whale as well, right? Focusing on themselves and their resources as you are sort of going through this transition. But it's like they have like all of this Ace of Cups energy, which is the unconditional love. Like just today it's coming through with a lot of support, and it just feels like unconditional support. And then with the High Priestess and the Four of Swords, there is this sort of because it's like you are stepping towards them, but because the last card out here was the Crow, this card comes out when it's like, especially with the High Priestess as well, there's still some sort of like having to navigate through perhaps a challenging transition or something like that. Because the Crow talks about like, yes, there is some sort of illusion perhaps ahead, something that you have to like, perhaps like a challenge or something that you're having to work through ahead. But you have all of the information and the wisdom and your connection to your intuition and source and your guides and all that in order to get you through whatever that is. And actually what I'm seeing here is, because it's coming out with the Four of Swords, it's talking about perhaps the challenge might be just to take a break and rest and integrate what it is that you've just learned from this situation, right? It's like, it's not, it's not coming out with the Three of Swords in this part of the reading. The Three of Swords did come out for the second part, which I will talk about in the extended. But what I'm seeing for here, it's kind of just like, especially with the Eight of Swords coming out, which talks about sort of like a false mentality, and it could be something in terms of like collaborating with others, because it could be something where you believed that you needed somebody else to help you in something like work, right? You needed somebody's approval, or you needed somebody to like give you guidance or something like that. But it's like you have all that information within yourself. You have all of this sort of like potential and ability to accomplish all the goals that you want without somebody else sort of giving you their approval or their collaboration or partnership, is kind of how this is feeling. So it may be just something like that, where you are understanding or realizing or integrating some knowledge or truth about your potential, which is like moving out of this Eight of Swords, which is a very sort of self-limiting energy, right? Like waiting for somebody else to give you the key piece of information or something like that, when in fact you are very much a Nine of Pentacles, very capable, very independent, extremely abundant, and also like able to attract all of the energy that you are wanting to experience is kind of how this is feeling. So I'm going to leave it there for the reading. I'm going to move to the extended. We're going to talk about what's something else that you need to know about the situation. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the description box below. You'll also find information for personal readings if you're interested in one of those. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.